Shadows of the past. The ocean stretched endlessly beyond the cliffside mansion, its waves crashing against the rocks in a persistent rhythm that had become both comfort and torment to Eliza Blackwood. 3 years had passed since the yacht accident that had supposedly claimed her husband's life, yet the sound of the sea still brought her both peace and pain in equal measure. Eliza stood on the balcony, her slender fingers, all 5 of them on each hand, gripping the wrought iron railing as the wind tousled her auburn hair. At 32, the shipping fortune heiress had spent nearly 1,000 days in a state of suspended grief, her life a careful balance of managing the Blackwood empire and learning to exist without Marcus. "Ms. Blackwood," called a soft voice from behind. "The car is ready for your appointment." Eliza turned to see her housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, standing in the doorway. "Thank you, Clara, I'll be right down." The quarterly checkups had become routine since the panic attacks began following Marcus's death. Dr. Bennett insisted they were necessary, though Eliza suspected they were more for monitoring her emotional state than any physical concern. 40 minutes later, Eliza sat in the sterile examination room of Harborview Medical Center, answering the same questions she always did, forcing polite smiles with both eyes crinkling at the corners when appropriate. "Your blood pressure is still running a bit high," Dr. Bennett noted, his weathered face showing the concern he'd carried for her since she was a child. "Are you still having the nightmares?" Eliza nodded. "Less frequently, but when they come, they're just as vivid." After the examination concluded, Eliza made her way through the hospital corridors toward the exit, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She'd nearly reached the elevator when a commotion from the man without memories. The long-term care ward existed in perpetual twilight, with dimmed lights and hushed voices creating an atmosphere suspended between life and death. Eliza's heart thundered in her chest as she followed Dahlia down the corridor, each step bringing her closer to a possibility too painful to hope for. "He doesn't look the same," Dahlia cautioned, pausing outside room 412. The facial reconstruction was extensive, but there's something in his mannerisms, the way he speaks. Eliza nodded, her hands both trembling slightly, smoothing down her dress. "I'll know," she whispered. "If it's him, I'll know." The man sitting by the window turned as they entered. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, illuminating a face that was both foreign and hauntingly familiar. Where Marcus had possessed a strong jaw and prominent cheekbones, this man's features were softer, his nose straighter, his brow less pronounced. But the eyes, those deep blue eyes that seemed to shift color with his moods, those remained unchanged. "Thomas," Dahlia said gently, using the name they'd given him. "This is Eliza Blackwood. She'd like to speak with you." The man called Thomas studied Eliza with polite curiosity, his head tilting slightly to the right, just as Marcus always did when considering something new. The gesture sent a jolt through Eliza's body. "Have we met before?" he asked, his voice carrying the same rich timbre she'd heard in her dreams for 3 years. Eliza sank into the chair opposite him. "I believe we might have," she said carefully. "May I ask about your memories? What's the earliest thing you remember?" Thomas smiled ruefully. "Waking up in a hospital in Athens with bandages covering my face and no idea who I was." His hands, both bearing 5 long fingers exactly like Marcus's, gestured toward his reconstructed features. "They told me I was found floating on debris after some kind of explosion at sea. No identification, nothing but the clothes I was wearing and this." He reached inside his shirt and pulled out a simple platinum chain. Dangling from it was a ring, a unique band of twisted platinum with a single sapphire. Eliza's wedding gift to Marcus. Her breath caught. "May I?" she asked, reaching out with trembling fingers. As she touched the ring, memories flooded back. Marcus sliding it onto his finger at their wedding, removing it before sailing because it had felt tight that day, his promise to never take it off again once he returned. "You recognize this," Thomas observed, his eyes, both intent and searching, fixed on her face. "I gave this to my husband," she whispered, before I thought he died." Thomas's expression shifted between confusion and alarm. "You think I'm your husband?" "I don't know," Eliza admitted, "but there are too many coincidences." Later that evening, as Eliza drove home along the coastal road, her mind raced with possibilities. The mansion loomed ahead, and for the first time since the accident, its emptiness felt temporary rather than permanent. Her phone rang, displaying her brother-in-law's number. Vincent had stepped in to help manage Blackwood shipping after Marcus's disappearance, becoming her right hand in business matters. "Vincent," she answered, "something extraordinary has happened." "What is it?" His voice sounded strained. "I need to see you immediately," she said. "It's about Marcus." A long pause followed. "Marcus is dead, Eliza," Vincent finally responded, his tone oddly flat. "Maybe not," she whispered. "Maybe he's been alive all this time." The silence that followed felt charged with something Eliza couldn't quite identify, until she realized what it was. Fear. Dangerous connections. "It's absurd," Vincent declared, pacing across Eliza's study the next morning. Both his hands clenched and unclenched rhythmically at his sides, a nervous habit Eliza had noticed developing since Marcus's disappearance. "Some con man with a passing resemblance to Marcus targeting you for your fortune." Eliza watched her brother-in-law carefully. Once bearing a striking resemblance to Marcus, the past 3 years had aged Vincent considerably. Deep lines now framed his mouth and silver threaded through his once purely dark hair. "He has Marcus's wedding ring, Vincent," she countered, "and he doesn't remember who he is." Hardly the approach of a con man. Vincent stopped pacing. "You've always been too trusting, Eliza. It's why Marcus loved you, both your kindness and naivety." His expression softened. "I promised my brother I'd look after you if anything happened to him. Let me investigate this man before you get too invested." After Vincent left, Eliza retrieved the hidden key to Marcus's private office, a room she'd left untouched since the accident. Inside, she began methodically reviewing financial records from the Mont nurse's station caught her attention. "Oh my God," gasped a voice, followed by the sound of a clipboard clattering to the floor. Eliza turned to see a young Asian woman in blue scrubs staring at her with wide, alarmed eyes. The nurse's name tag read Dahlia Chen. Her hands, both with their full complement of 5 fingers, trembled visibly as she approached. "Ms. Blackwood?" the nurse asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eliza nodded, puzzled by the stranger's reaction. "Yes, I'm Eliza Blackwood. Is everything all right?" The nurse glanced around nervously, then stepped closer. "I need to speak with you. Privately. It's important." Something in the woman's urgent tone made Eliza follow her to a small consultation room. Once inside, Dahlia closed the door and turned to face Eliza, her dark eyes swimming with emotion. "I'm sorry to approach you like this," she began, "but when I saw you, I knew immediately who you were. I recognized you from the photograph." "What photograph?" Eliza asked, a strange chill creeping up her spine. Dahlia took a deep breath, her shoulders rising and falling with the effort. "The one he keeps, the one he stares at even though he claims not to know who you are." "Who are you talking about?" Eliza's heart began to pound against her ribs. The nurse's eyes locked with hers, unwavering despite her obvious distress. "Your husband, Ms. Blackwood, the man who was brought to our long-term care ward 6 months ago after being transferred from a hospital in Greece." The room seemed to tilt suddenly. "That's impossible," Eliza whispered. "My husband died 3 years ago." Dahlia shook her head slowly. "No, Miss Blackwood, your husband never died." The words hit Eliza like a physical blow. Her legs, both strong and steady until that moment, gave way beneath her as darkness crowded the edges of her vision. She felt herself falling, her body collapsing toward the floor as Dahlia lunged forward to catch her. As consciousness slipped away, fragmented memories flashed through Eliza's mind. Marcus's laughing face as he boarded the yacht that fateful day. His strong arms, both muscled and tanned, waving goodbye. His promise to return in time for their anniversary dinner. The Coast Guard officer at her door 2 days later. The empty casket at the funeral. When she came to, Eliza was lying on an examination table, the concerned faces of Dr. Bennett and Nurse Chen hovering above her. "Eliza, can you hear me?" Dr. Bennett asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "Yes," she managed, her mouth dry. "What happened?" "You fainted," he explained, then turned to Dahlia with a stern expression. "What exactly did you say to my patient, Nurse Chen?" Dahlia's eyes darted between them. "The truth, doctor. I told her about patient 4726, the man with the reconstructed face and the amnesia, the one who was found floating on debris in the Mediterranean 3 years ago." Eliza struggled to sit up, her arms, both trembling now, pushing against the table. "Take me to him," she demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. Take me to this man you think is Marcus. Dr. Bennett placed a restraining hand on her shoulder. Eliza, this is highly irregular. We need to— Now, Eliza interrupted, her green eyes flashing with a determination that had lain dormant for 3 years. I need to see him now. Veiled intentions. The car skidded violently on the rain-slicked coastal road, hydroplaning toward the guardrail that separated the asphalt from a 60-foot drop to the rocks below. Eliza gripped the dashboard with both hands, her 10 fingers turning white with pressure, as Thomas fought to regain control of the vehicle. The brakes aren't responding, he shouted, pumping the pedal frantically with his right foot. His left leg braced against the floorboard as he struggled to steer into the skid. The sedan slammed into the guardrail with a sickening crunch of metal, teetering precariously before settling back onto the road. Both their bodies jerked forward against their seatbelts, then fell back against the seats, hearts pounding. Are you hurt? Thomas asked, his hands both shaking now, reaching to cup Eliza's face. She shook her head, too stunned to speak. This wasn't an accident. Not after the gas leak in her home 2 days ago, or the falling scaffolding that had nearly struck them outside the hospital yesterday. Someone cut the brake line, Thomas said, examining the pedal. Someone wants us dead. 2 hours later, they arrived at Dahlia's family cottage, a small hideaway tucked in the woods 20 miles inland. The nurse had offered it without hesitation when Eliza called, understanding the danger without needing explanation. No one knows about this place, Dahlia assured them. My grandparents left it to me last year. I haven't even changed the name on the title yet. That night, as rain pattered against the roof, Thomas and Eliza sat before the fireplace, the dancing flames illuminating their faces in a warm glow. I found financial records, Eliza explained, showing him the documents she'd discovered. 3 months before your accident, someone began siphoning money from Blackwood Shipping. You were investigating it. Thomas studied the papers, his brow furrowing in concentration. Vincent, he muttered, the name emerging unprompted. Eliza's eyes widened. You remember? Just fragments, he said. An argument in an office. Vincent shouting that I didn't understand. He looked up, his blue eyes, both filled with emotion, locking with hers. And the yacht. I remember someone pushing me, falling into cold water. The revelation hung between them, heavy with implication. Vincent had tried to kill Marcus once. Now he was trying again. Later, as moonlight filtered through the bedroom window, Thomas traced the outline of Eliza's face with gentle fingers. What if I never fully remember? He asked, his voice barely audible. What if I'm never completely the man you married? Eliza leaned forward until their foreheads touched. You're both the man I lost and someone entirely new, she whispered. And I'm falling in love with both versions. Their lips met in a kiss that bridged past and present, tentative at first, then deepening with rediscovered passion. His hands, both strong and gentle, explored her body with reverent wonder, while hers mapped the familiar territory of his shoulders, his chest, the small scar on his left hip that had survived whatever trauma had claimed his face. They moved together in the shadowed room, two bodies finding their rhythm as if remembering a dance performed countless times before. When they finally lay breathless in each other's arms, Eliza felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Joy and grief intermingled in a bittersweet reunion. I remember this, Thomas murmured against her hair. Not in my mind, but in my body. My heart remembers you, Eliza. She pressed her face against his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat she'd thought silenced forever. Tomorrow, she whispered, we end this. We confront Vincent with what we know. Neither noticed the headlights briefly illuminating the trees outside before going dark. Resurrection dawn had barely broken when the cottage door splintered inward. Vincent stood in the threshold, a pistol gripped in his right hand, his face contorted with desperation. His eyes, both bloodshot and wild, darted between Thomas and Eliza as they scrambled from the kitchen table. You couldn't leave it alone, Vincent snarled, training the gun on Thomas. You had to keep digging just like before. Thomas stepped forward, positioning himself between the weapon and Eliza. I remember now, Vincent, he said, his voice steady despite the danger. Not everything, but enough. You were embezzling from the company. When I confronted you on the yacht, you pushed me overboard. Vincent's laugh was brittle, and you were supposed to die. The explosion was meant to destroy all evidence. Instead, here you are, a ghost returning to haunt me. It's over, Vincent, Eliza said. We've already sent the financial records to the authorities. Then I have nothing left to lose, Vincent replied, his finger tightening on the trigger. What happened next unfolded in a blur of movement. Thomas lunged forward as Vincent fired. The bullet grazed Thomas's shoulder instead of finding his heart. Both men crashed to the floor, grappling for control of the weapon. As they struggled, something extraordinary happened in Thomas's mind. Like a dam breaking, memories flooded back in a torrent. His childhood with Vincent, the day he met Eliza, their wedding, the gradual discovery of his brother's betrayal, the confrontation on the yacht, the cold embrace of the ocean. I remember everything, Marcus gasped, pinning Vincent to the floor with newfound strength fueled by clarity and purpose. I remember who I am. When the police arrived, summoned by Dahlia, who had been monitoring the cottage from her car down the road, they found Vincent subdued and Marcus holding Eliza in his arms, his face buried against her neck as 3 years of lost memories settled into place. 2 months later, as autumn painted the coastal landscape in amber and gold, Marcus and Eliza stood on the balcony of their cliffside home. His wounds had healed, leaving only a thin scar on his shoulder to join the collection of marks that told the story of his journey back to her. Does it bother you? He asked, gesturing to his reconstructed face. That I look different now? Eliza smiled, reaching up with both hands, all 10 fingers tenderly tracing his features. Your eyes are the same, she said. The way you look at me hasn't changed. And Vincent? Marcus asked. The trial was still months away, his brother facing charges of embezzlement, attempted murder, and fraud. I visit him sometimes, Eliza admitted. He's my family too, in a way. Broken, but still family. Marcus nodded, understanding the complexity of forgiveness and justice. What about us? Where do we go from here? Eliza leaned into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of his arms, both wrapped securely around her waist. We start again, she said simply. Not as who we were, but as who we've become. Below them, waves continued their eternal dance against the shore, no longer a reminder of what was lost, but of what had been found. A love strong enough to survive death itself and the miracle of second chances. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Marcus bent to kiss his wife, his heart full with the knowledge that some bonds transcend even the darkest shadows of the past. They had survived separation, transformation, and betrayal. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, both their hearts beating in perfect synchrony. To resurrection, he whispered against her lips. Eliza smiled. To resurrection and to whatever comes next.